Howard Lutnick was the guy behind it, and he is now the Commerce Secretary in Washington, serving the President Trump administration. His two sons are now, I guess they've inherited the company, they've taken over the company. I'm not totally clear on what their role is within the company, but I do know the company is highly involved in a lot of the crypto deals that have taken place this year. Todd Gillespie is a Bloomberg News banking reporter, and he's been looking into this for, I want to say, weeks, months?
Well, I've been covering them for, gosh, nearly 2 years now.
Okay, years then.
Yeah. But we recently did an interview that came out today, Scarlet, that basically broke news on their financials this year. They're having basically their best year ever. And then they've also obviously this year been facing various questions about conflicts of interest.
Okay, so here's my question. His sons are, I guess, running the show, but what does their position look like on the org chart of Cantor Fitzgerald, the overall business?
Give us a tree.
Sure. So Cantor Fitzgerald is a group that has basically 3 companies underneath it. One is a private investment bank called Cantor, not to be confused necessarily with Cantor Fitzgerald. And separately, it has 2 public companies in which it holds controlling stakes. Newmark Group, which is a property firm, property broker, and BGC Group, which is a financial broker across London, New York as well. But Cantor, which is kind of the core of the business, essentially the most secretive, most private, kind of Howard Lutnick's, realm for the past 30 years before he went into the administration. I mean, this is the hub of the group where they are investing in, that they're building out teams that are dedicated to crypto. They are building out a lot of investment banking, trading, Bitcoin related lending projects. They are really taking advantage of everything that is coming with the hype around Trump related booms in those sectors.
And this part is controlled by Brandon and Kyle Lutnick.
Well, Brandon and Kyle Lutnick own the entire group. They have upwards of an 80% share, I think, if not even more, of the entire group. But yeah, Brandon is the CEO of the entire group, CEO and chairman of the entire group. Kyle, his older brother, is the executive vice chairman. Kyle's quite involved with Newmark specifically, the property group. But yeah, Brandon is in many ways the driver for a lot of this crypto-related business. But they have 3 co-CEOs of the private investment bank, Sage Kelly, Pascal Vandelier, and Christian Wool. And between those 3, they kind of drive a lot of the day-to-day operations. They build out the investment bank. They have been essentially Howard Lutnick's deputies for the better part of a decade before he went to DC. And they, in many ways, are sort of the driving force behind the company still. And they're, very much in partnership with the Lutnick sons.
So taking a step back, just remind us of the relevance. How has Cantor really fit into this broader financial ecosystem, and what has that shift in power looked like?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good question, Norah, because, 5 years ago, Cantor Fitzgerald was a minnow on Wall Street. Well, some might say it's still a minnow on Wall Street, let's be clear. I mean, their revenue is about $2.5 billion. That's, roughly like a third of Jefferies. It's a similar model to Jefferies. It has a trading sort of broker-dealer vibes. It's got an investment bank, M&A, but it also does brokerage, has a big equities platform as well. But for years, it was fairly small. And Howard Lutnick took it over in the 90s from Bernie Cantor and Bernie Cantor's wife. There was a big legal spat over this. For years, it was, it's been a relatively small scale Wall Street bank. Obviously, now it's been launched into the limelight because of Lutnick's involvement with Trump. He fundraised for Trump last year. He became the chair of his transition team. So he was responsible for drawing up the list of candidates to basically go into the Trump administration, into the cabinet, and then himself ended up in the cabinet as well, which then forced this big transition to Brandon, to Kyle. And that was a transition that I think these sons expected at some point, that their father would step back. The fact that it was done for political reasons and the fact that it was done maybe quite early. Bear in mind, Brandon Lutnick is only 27. Kyle Lutnick is 29. For context, I'm 28. So when I meet these guys, I'm like, you could be, you could be in my class at school. But in many ways, they've sort of, they've embraced the challenge. Brandon Lutnick has been standing. He basically led this conference that was happening this week in Miami, where I was. He interviewed some big names. We had Ted Cruz there, who, by the way, is also the chair of the committee that scrutinizes Howard Lutnick's Commerce Department in the Senate. So, there are all sorts of overlaps. As you would expect in the Trump world, where business and politics probably interact more than in any other administration we've had. But, fundamentally, this business is now saying, they have been preparing for years for this moment, essentially, for the crypto boom, for a lot of the AI and data center work that they're doing. They've been hiring bankers as well who are trying to take advantage of the regional bank mergers in the US. There's a lot of different aspects to this. And I think being a leaner bank, they would say, not as clunky and slow moving as some of the bigger Wall Street institutions, has allowed them to take advantage of these opportunities as well.
But have they been preparing for the advent of crypto being embraced by the government, given that this happened all rather suddenly when President Trump became, was inaugurated?
I mean, they have, Scarlet, to be fair to them. I mean, they hired their first crypto banker in 2020. Years ago. They've been Tether's main banker for I think even longer than that. Essentially, Howard Lutnick created that relationship, built that relationship with Tether when it was essentially a pariah. Bear in mind, Tether is a company that is now trying to fundraise at a valuation of up to $500 billion, which would put it, a joint most valuable private company in the world, incredibly profitable crypto company. But now, obviously, we're talking years later, the Department of Justice just last year was reported to be investigating Tether. This week, the Tether CEO stands on stage with the chair of the SEC and the chair of the CFTC, embracing them, holding hands, well, not holding hands, but smiling, I should say, next to them. And it kind of gives you a sense of how times have changed. So
how have they leveraged their connections at all in Washington? Have we been seeing that playing out at all?
Well, they would say that they, any Washington, in their defense, they would say that any Washington interaction they would have is just the same as, any other firm would have, right? But Brandon Lutnick was invited to the White House to have dinner with Trump and other big Wall Street head honchos like David Solomon, Jamie Dimon, Ken Moelis was there as well this week. I think that was Wednesday night. I actually think I saw Brandon leave the conference event in Miami to head off to the plane, not quite realizing where he was going at the time. But, he's been invited and brought into this realm. Obviously, his father, Howard Lutnick, was also at this dinner. So make of that what you will. There's also a case here of kind of correlation versus causation, or these kinds of senses, right? Like if you are administration that wants to embrace crypto, who are the kinds of banks whose conferences you're going to speak at? Where are the sort of partnerships?
Right.
Who are the industry leaders that you're going to be consulting? Maybe they might be the clients of the biggest crypto bank that everybody's talking about.
Which would make sense.
Which would make sense. But at the same time, there are very understandable questions that are being raised over conflicts here.
Yeah.
And, I think it's important for people to keep an eye on that.